Ecco, ora passiamo al nostro primo ospite estero. C'è un cambio di programma, abbiamo il piacere di avere con noi questa mattina il vice sindaco di Vienna, Maria Vassilakou, che è da anni impegnata per la promozione della mobilità in bicicletta. Il vice sindaco si è proposto l'obiettivo di raddoppiare l'indice di mobilità ciclistica a Vienna dal 5 al 10% entro il 2015 a giugno di quest'anno ha ospitato nella città di Vienna la conferenza internazionale dei velocity. Per questo motivo abbiamo ritenuto di invitare il rappresentante della città di Vienna, la vice sindaco, così ci potrà illustrare quali sono le politiche adottate e sicuramente dare un contributo alle nostre riflessioni sulla mobilità in bicicletta. Grazie. Prego. Sì. Vuoi invitare tu?
So hello, good morning everybody. Good morning. I didn't bring a presentation with me, which means that you will have to listen and look at me. But before I start, I would just... Now it works, right? But before I start, actually, I would just like to know who I am talking to, because I know who invited me, but I don't know who you are. So, who is working with bike advocacy groups? Could you just raise hands? Okay. Who is into administration? Right. Are there any politicians apart from myself here? Okay. So, mainly decision makers. How many are here? Okay, just a few. So I'll keep wondering who is the rest of you, or if you just, don't want to raise your hands, but this is actually your choice. Anyway, first of all, good morning once again. Thank you for inviting me. Well, in the next minutes, I would like to talk, first of all, about cycling and its potentials to create better cities. And besides, of course, I would like to talk a little bit about Vienna, which is my city, and who is actually a very dynamic and successful newcomer when it comes to raising our cycling share within a few years. Actually, we have managed to almost double it in the last few years, so this is why I guess we are an interesting case study. Now, what we all know is that cities are growing. They are growing very rapidly, and by the year 2050, 70% of the total population of the world will be living in cities. Actually, most of them in megacities. Growing cities have to face and solve several challenges, and these challenges are the same for growing cities all over the world. What these challenges might be that are relevant to our topic today. First of all, we have to manage a post-fossil energy future. That means, mainly, we have to focus on mobility modes that are not, that do not rely on cheap and abundant fossil energy. And of course, it has pretty much to do with energy saving, so finding efficient ways to organize mobility. Second of all, the second huge challenge is mobility itself. I mean, if you have to move millions of people every day in a rapid, affordable, and efficient manner, this clearly is also, a big challenge. Third of all, urban design. We need urban design, new ways of urban design that give an answer to suburbanization. Because growing cities have actually two directions where they can grow. They can grow either this direction or they can grow this direction. And we all know what urban sprawl means when it comes to organizing our everyday life. afterwards. Fourth, they have to cope with lack of space. If you have a growing city, that means that you have to cope with space in a very, very efficient manner. You have to make the most out of it. And fifth and the last, it has to do pretty much with our quality of life. Seeing to it that you provide quality of life for millions of people is also quite a hard task. And I always want to put it in very simple words so that everybody understands it, because everybody is talking about quality of life, but hey, what does that actually mean? So what I always say is we need to create cities that are good for children. Why? Because what is good for children is good for us all. We all know it. We have actually, what I always say, the urbanist's nightmare is what happens when young people know that they're going to have the first child. The first thing they say is, oh, now we have to move out of the city to the countryside, to a place where we want our children to grow up. Why do they want to do so? Because it's quiet, because there is space to move freely around, because it's safe, because it's green, because the child can have sun and it can have clean air, fresh air, right? So, when I'm talking about quality of life, I'm talking about creating cities where people live not because they have to, but because they want to. And this means cities where we all want to live and want to bring our children up in them. So, all these 5 challenges actually lead us directly to the bicycle. But I will talk about this a little bit later. Also, maybe one last thing about growing cities. Of course, growing cities have to cope with many, many, many problems. But I believe, to put it with Jaime Lerner, the very, very famous, the legendary mayor of Curitiba, cities are not the problem, they are the solution. If we know that 70% of the world's population is going to be living in cities in a few decades from now, then clearly this is where we have to focus upon, and this is where we have to, well, work out solutions for a better future on a global level. So, let's take now a closer look to urban mobility. If we look at cities, then we know that already today, 24% of all distances traveled are traveled within cities. If nothing changes in the way everyday travel is organized, then the annual amount of these travels, okay, is expected to cost 800 billion annually on a global level in the next 40 years. And it's expected to also consume 170% of the world's biocapacity. So clearly, once again, we know that we have to switch to a different, well, model of organizing our everyday mobility in cities. Now, what do we do in Vienna about this? Our vision right now is what we call 80-20 by 25. Now, what do we mean by this? We mean that by 2025, we want 80% of all everyday journeys to be organized in an ecological manner. This means public transport or walking or cycling, well, put together. And only 20% of everyday journeys should be organized by private car. To be honest, right now we're discussing if we're not even changing this target to 85 to 15. I think that this is possible, and I will explain also why we could even make it to have, by 2025, 85% ecological modes and only 15% traveled by car. It is manageable, but let's say the main question is, do we really want to say it openly? Because many people, wouldn't even believe that this is actually easily achieved in a city like Vienna. Currently, we have 72% of all journeys done in an ecological manner in Vienna, and only 27% of all journeys are done by private car. So clearly, we're not that far away from achieving this target within the next, actually, 12 years. Vienna has a dedication for sustainable mobility for many years now. We want a mobility that is not only sustainable, but it is also affordable. And also, we want a mobility that is not dependent on fossil fuels, but, well, actually tries to organize everything around walking, cycling, public transport, and also sharing of transport devices, also car sharing on a private basis. Now, where are the challenges? Vienna is also, actually right now, the fastest growing city within the German-speaking area. Last year we had 25,000 new Viennese, which is lovely, of course. But at the same time, of course, it means organizing a great deal of things. And now if you think of 25,000 people who are arriving almost every year right now, if every one of them brought and used their private car with them, then we know that there would just not be enough space for all these cars. So simple it is. So what we have to do is to reduce the dependency and the use of private car, and this is what we have to achieve within the next years. Now, I'm not going to talk so much about what we're doing in other terms, but so that you have a brief overview before we start talking about cycling, I would like to tell you these things. First of all, we have a share of public transport of actually right now 39%, which is extremely high, and, well, has to do with the big tradition of the city in investing in public transport for the last decades. What we did was also to make the annual ticket for public transport more affordable. So we reduced the price for the annual ticket 2 years ago by 80 euro. It now only costs 365 euro per year. So for 1 euro per day, you can use public transport. And this, of course, meant a great boost. But, of course, public transport alone is not the strategy how we can reach the 80-20 vision by 2025, because investing in public transport infrastructure means very, very high costs, and at the same time, it takes many years until it starts working. So this is clearly one direction a city has to move to, but if you want to have strong and rapid results, then public transport is clearly not the way. The second thing is we have a very high share of walking of pedestrians. We're a very walkable city. We're right now at 28%. So 2012 was the first year where more people were walking in Vienna every day than driving the car. Now, we want to reach 30% within the next decade, but also raising the pedestrian share also means, well, let's say, a great demand in investment in many, many different types of infrastructure, and also, well, it means many, many different measures, let's put it this way. It has a relatively high cost, depending on what you want to do, and also, it means that it takes time until you can see results. This is not the type of investment where if you're already at about 28%, you can do things where you can actually rapidly grow it up to 30. So this is why we said it takes a decade to grow from 28% to 30% pedestrians. Now, if you look at all this, you clearly realize that the thing you have to do is to reduce car dependency and to invest into cycling. Why? And why do I deeply believe that cycling is the city changer par excellence, to put it this way? It's cheap, it's accessible, to everybody, almost everybody, let's put it this way. It's sustainable, it's energy efficient. Actually, you don't need any fuels for it. It's extremely space efficient. It is low cost, and it's low cost investment for the city itself compared to other types of investment. You have results in a very short period of time. You can actually see what you're doing and what it brings. It's fun. I think this is also one major reason. I mean, we want to have cities as a set of happy people where people like living in. It changes the quality of life in the city because, of course, it means less noise, better quality of air. It means less speed. It brings an overall speed reduction. This means more safety. This means a city that is more friendly to children. And last but not least, it also means communication. If you're cycling every day to work and you see somebody you know, it's very easy to just stop and say hello. So it also helps to create a lively city, which is also extremely important from an urbanist's view. So what we found out, to put it in simple words, is that we have a bike share of about 7% right now. When I took up about 3 years ago, the bike share in Vienna was 4.7. So it wasn't even 5%. We said we want to double our bike share, first of all, within 5 years, which means hard work. We want to arrive at approximately 10% by the year 2015. And then, if we manage to raise it by another 5% to 15% by the year 2025, then we are at 85 to 15 by 2025. This is what it consists of. 40% public transport, 30% walking, 15% cycling, and we're where we wanted to arrive at. It's not even that hard to actually set ambitious targets and achieve them, but you have to have a clear plan, and you have to have 10 years' time in order, to, push measures forward. So now, how do we try to achieve this in Vienna? Well, we have mainly 4 strategic approaches in order to support urban cycling. This is, first, the general framework. Second, improving, of course, the general framework. Second, improving infrastructure. Third, communication. This means raising awareness. And fourth, administration. And I think that we have to work on all 4 levels at the same time in order to achieve best results. And of course, depending on your city's budget, some of these measures will cost a little bit, other ones are very, very affordable and very easy to achieve. General framework first. First of all, if you want to have a city that is friendly to cyclists and friendly to cycling, then you need speed limits. You don't need speed limits on some streets, you need speed limits everywhere. You need a speed limit of about 30 kilometers per hour, and this is actually the best and cheapest measure that you could ever take in order to advance cycling within your city. What you should know, Graz, my colleague is going to be talking later on, are pioneers in this respect in Austria. They were the first city to introduce a 30 kilometer per hour speed limit all over the city. We're doing this in Vienna right now as well. We have introduced 30 kilometers per hour speed limit in every residential area, which results now in some streets that are crucial to public transport and to also, of course, individual mobility, car-based mobility, where we don't have it, but mainly we have it all over the city, and that makes it a huge difference. Second of all, you need to rethink your urban design. Clearly, in historical parts of the city, you cannot change things that easily, but if you think about creating new city areas, then just drive there by bike, have a look at the space and design it from the point of view of someone who is cycling every day. You need to rethink your streets. You need to realize that streets are not a space for cars. They are there for people to use and live in. And this means that you have to think space for cycling automatically. And you have to claim this space. Now, in Vienna, for instance, right now, rethinking means realizing that we have 300,000 Viennese cycling to work every day in the warm months of the year. Now, of course, once again, Graz, as its total, is cycling to work in Vienna. This is the picture we're always using so that people realize actually how many people are there cycling already. There are many things that you can do in this respect, but I will just bring another two, let's say examples that show it. You have to, if you don't have space, for instance, for cycling infrastructure, for bike lanes, then you have to turn into shared space where you're very short of space. You have to reorganize the way that mobility is organizing within the street, which means everybody more space that can be used together. And what we're also trying to do right now, which might seem as the opposite of what Padua is doing, but it isn't, we are trying to get the cyclists down on the street again. Wherever we had shared space with pedestrians, where we found out that the space was so little that we had conflicts between pedestrians and cyclists. So wherever we have conflicts right now, we're getting cyclists down to the street again, because if you have a speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour, it is more convenient and it's safer for everybody if you have the cyclists on the streets than if you have them on the pavement. So what I'm trying to say by general framework, this means of wherever you're short of space and you cannot build a bike lane, look at it closer and see to it what can you change on a general level which will promote cycling indirectly. Now, as I said, the second main approach has to do with improving infrastructure. Vienna was the first city to introduce bike sharing schemes many years ago, and this is a success story on its own. Second, we invest 5% of our annual road construction and maintenance budget in order to create new cycling infrastructure. This results to about 5 to 10 million euro per year that are invested right now. But it has to do with what do you count as cycling infrastructure. This is why you could, if you look at it on a very, very strict basis, it's at least 5 million that is invested per year. Vienna also already has 1,200 kilometers of cycling infrastructure, mainly bike lanes already. And we're building approximately 17 to 20 new kilometers per year. But right now we are focusing mainly on closing infrastructure gaps, because what you also find out is that, of course, it's not always easy building lanes, separate lanes. There might be problems, within the population. It costs, for instance, parking space. So this is where you many times might have conflicts. And this has led in Vienna to a system that is quite advanced, but it has gaps, and it's quite hard to fill in those gaps. This is what we're doing right now, trying to close them systematically. We're beginning to introduce contrasting color to mark bike lanes, pretty much like in Padua. We're introducing cycling streets. These are streets that are actually, they might be used by cars, but only in order to search for a parking space. They are actually reserved for cycling and mean a huge improvement, because they really give space, and they really give space where you can cycle freely, quickly, and where you don't have to stop on every crossroads because they're priority streets. So these are a few examples of what we're doing, and currently we're opening all one-way streets in the opposite direction for cycling in combination with a speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour. So the third strategic approach I talked about is raising awareness. Now, raising awareness means that I will have to find my notes in a second, and I can continue wherever they are, here they are. When I arrived in Vienna, that was about 27 years ago, people just didn't think of the cycle as a means of everyday transport. It was something for children, it was something for weirdos like myself, but one could not imagine that an adult could take a bike and cycle to work or to school or to the university every day. So clearly, what we had to do, we were still at 4.7%, as I told you a few years ago, was to change the mindset and the way that people regard cycling in general. So the first step was to bring cycling to the political agenda in the year 2010 and to create a discussion. Discussion means controversy, but what it also meant is that ever since 2010, cycling is an issue in Vienna. It is something that people talk about. And because they talk about it all the time, it means that more and more people arrive at the idea, actually, I could start cycling myself as well every day. Why are there so many people who do it? The second thing was we started investing in events. We had the first parade, the first cycling parade in the year 2011. We had 8,000 people straight away who took part in it. We had lovely pictures. We do it now every year. And this is just one example for many events that we're doing that are raising awareness, because it's not only fun for the people who participate, it's also fun for the people who look and who actually come up with the idea, I could do it myself as well. Another example for an event, we have what we call the bike house. This is a device that can be transported by bike from neighborhood to neighborhood. We can set it up there, and people can go there and can talk to a few colleagues who are always there about cycling. They can get information, but moreover, what they do is that they provide a bike corso. That means they have several bikes and you can try cycling with them. They even have e-bikes, so people can try. And it really, really works. And what I can tell you is that if you look at the face expression of a person who is about 60, and the last time in his life that he was riding a bike was when he was a child, and you see what happens to him or to her as soon as they try riding again and do the first few meters, then you know what I'm talking about. It really works. So there are many, many things that you can do clearly. What we also did was to invite the Velocity and host it in the year 2013, which meant 1,300 participants, more than 1,300 participants, for a whole week, cycling, discussing cycling, events, and so on and so forth, raising awareness in the city. We declared the year 2013 as the cycling year in Vienna, and we launched a big campaign within this year that focused on the joy of cycling and promoted role models. The main idea of the campaign was to show different people, many different people in their everyday cycling habits, and let people realize that cycling is diverse and cycling is something that actually everybody could do. So you have to invest money, this is my message, into raising awareness, and this clearly means that you have to launch events and campaigns. And last but not least, administration. This is the fourth strategic approach. We created a cycling agency. We introduced a cycling advocate, Mr. Cycle in this case, who is the one within administration who is supposed to actually present fight for and communicate the needs of cyclists in Vienna. We introduced a strategic unit which is strategically planning what are our next steps next year, the year after, and so on and so forth, and which consists of people from every relevant department of the city that are the ones within their department that have to do with cycling issues. And last but not least, later on, we are planning to create a new department for the design of public space. And now this, I think, is also very crucial, because learning together with your departments and your people to regard streets not as a place for cars, but as I said, as public space where city life happens, and to remember that there are many, many different uses of the street, and to think of cyclists actually automatically and in a modern way, means, of course, that you have to change the way you're designing streets altogether, and you have to change the mindset within administration. So, I thank you very much for listening to me. This is actually what I said, what we're trying to do right now in Vienna. To put it short, it has pretty much to do with rethinking on the one hand, and it has pretty much to do with investing on the other hand. But I think that if you're on a short budget, which is quite often the case in cities right now, all over Europe, then at least try rethinking. And there are many things that you can do that will not cost money, like speed limits, and will mean a tremendous difference for cycling within your city. And I am sure that if we keep working together and if we keep fighting, then we're going to make the difference within Europe in the next years. Thanks.